So we will go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. So we started the State of the School address, probably back in 2005. And so it's just always been a way. And now that we upload all this to the Inform Montessori blog, we have less people that come in hand, but we really appreciate you coming out tonight. This is very informal. I've got some peeps up here with me tonight. They're going to be sharing. So Danielle and Hannigan are part of the teen transition team, and their other cohort, Valerie, just had a baby 4 days ago, Saturday.
Yes.
And so she won't be here tonight. And so Karina will be talking some, as well as Katie and Melissa, and so all working up at the curved desk. And so we have Emily and Tracy and Alan. They're all teachers at the school, also here tonight. And who else do we have?
Kelly.
Katie.
I called you Katie?
That's where we're at right now. That's where we're at.
So sorry. Kelly Coots.
So Kelly, you're off the hook.
Master of the numbers. Do you all want to introduce yourself and want to tell us what age your children are? Sure.
I'm Mary. My daughter's 4. She's in the early education program at Washington.
Great.
She just started this year.
Thank you. Great.
I'm Leslie. My son is also in quadrifoil. He's 5.
Oh, that's great.
Really loves it.
Awesome.
Veronica, my oldest is in Monsoon, and my younger one is in Turquoise. Angel, my oldest is in Typhoon, and then I've got one in Sapphire and one in Amethyst.
I'll let you go last. You guys are next.
Kevin Everline, my wife Ellen, and her daughter's in the teen program.
And Glenn's up there. See, I forgot him too. There's Glenn. And so, Gary. And so we also have a member of the PIP Council here, Melissa Cole, who's the chair. And so we can, there's a board member here tonight, but the board meets the second Tuesday of every month, and so they meet in the summit. So we meet next week, if you'd like to join. So tell us about what you want to tell us about PIP. I think go one more down. She's got a slide there.
I don't feel like I've been here forever. But for those of us who haven't, right at you.
Can you sign up?
PIP, our main purpose is to facilitate. Look, I can't see. I gotta take the glasses off. To help families get involved in community building events and to help facilitate volunteer opportunities for the 10 commitment hours that we all agree to every year. We communicate all these opportunities each month through PIP Connection. They're also in Kupla Notes. And we have some upcoming events. Staff appreciation is next week. We have lots of things going on for the staff.
Did you hear the cheering earlier when the staff was all in here?
I didn't. I wasn't here probably. But their favorite thing is food, so we have breakfast and lunch coming. They like massages, so they're going to get massages 2 days a week next week. And then we're going to do just like special PPC snacks for them so that they have stuff to eat while they're here all day. We also have book fair coming up in April, the 8th through the 12th. It's a buy one, get one free. And new this year, we have e-wallet, which you can go and set up an account through Scholastics. And I think you use your credit card, and then you can give like your child an allowance instead of sending a check with them or money with them. And then they can just give us, I think there's something that you can print out and give to them, or they can just give us their name and their studio, and then we can find them in the system, and then it charges, I think, at the end of book fair. So like if you give them $20, but they only spend $10, then it'll only charge your card $10. So I'm looking forward to that. And then of course we have Spring Celebration on May 18th. It's at Perrin Park. in Jeffersonville from 11 to 3. Raffle basket sign-up sheets will be up next week on Wednesday, just in time for PBCs. We will need lots of volunteers, so just keep an eye out in Kuppel Notes or the March Pit Connection, and we'll have a link for you to sign up on Sign Up Genius. And I knew I forgot one. We have Chuck E. Cheese coming up on March 15th, and those hours are from 3 to 9. And you can always reach us at pip@shiningminds.com.
All right, great.
Okay, so we're audio taping with this, and so that the voice is a little more clear. So the next thing we like to do is just talk about what's new going on at the school. I tell you, and I say this to my coworkers all the time, I feel so humbled by the group of people I get to meet with. As I looked out, the whole staff was in here a little bit ago, and at least 2 of them that were in here were out sick today with their children and came in for the meeting with the rest of the staff. You don't see that everywhere. It's just a pretty powerful group of people. And last year I went to a workshop on coaching, and it really is a way to help to communicate with each other better, right? It's a communication method. And so at first I never liked the word. When I'd seen it before, I'm like, we're not going to have a coach that's supposed to coach everybody else. And I don't like to create words that make some people feel inferior to other people. And this workshop, which was put on by the Center for Montessori in the public sector, really defined that well and talked about it's just helping people to carry people on to their next place. You're not doing it to them or for them, you're doing it with them. And so I and a coworker went in the spring, and then another coworker went a little bit later, and then we had this person come into the full school coaching seminar because I didn't just want some people to have it, I wanted us all to have it. So it's been a really powerful experience watching all of us really be open to really thinking about who we are, being reflective, being humble, and so using those tools with each other every day. And then we have some specific people that help us with certain things throughout the course of the week. And then we also spent the second day doing what's called a child or a teen study. So when you have a young person that's not going forward in a way that's progressing, and you want to figure out why and want to work with your colleagues in a very professional way to brainstorm, and then there's a piece of that's called a family meeting. And that's probably been one of the most powerful things we've done as a school, and it's all happening. Staff are staying late, and they're coming in early, and they're doing things to really help young people that, for whatever reason, aren't meeting their best every day, so that they can be a member of that. So that's been a really cool thing that's going on. This is very informal. Anything I say, and you're like, what is that? So how does that work? Please don't hesitate. All 7 of you. And then Montessori credentialing. So we have 27 staff throughout this building now that either has a Montessori credential or is going through credentialing process. So we have a group of Montessori teacher educators that come here in the summer and will do so on and off moving forward. And we have other staff that go to places like Oregon and California and Florida for different training programs. So we have a nice diverse group of people with different backgrounds. Maria Montessori, of course, started her philosophy started the American Montessori International, and then it became in the States AMS, American Montessori Society, and then there's lots of independents like IMC, International Montessori Council. And so we have a mixture of all those kinds of people from different training programs, and it's really cool that we have so many now in all the classrooms, so studios. One of our goals for the last 10 years is we built this building, and the building was a bit over budget, and knowing that the state budget, what we get per child, waxes and wanes every year, and how do we have a co-teacher model, how do we do that part well? And so one of our goals has been to increase teacher salaries. One of the things that we did was refinanced a few years ago the building so that we could spread it out just a little bit longer and enjoy some of that cash flow instead of it all stopping at the same time. And so now, and we also had a goal of increasing our support staff. So now we have 15 support staff that work with children, throughout the building, as well as the teacher salary increase there. You know, a lot of my colleagues that are charter school operators don't have the financial stability that we have, and part of that's because, you know, I drive Kelly crazy a little bit, or Katie, whichever we're talking to now. And but, you know, when I grew up managing my dad's business for about 5 years, and I noticed that he, one of his, you know, the place wasn't fancy, there wasn't nice furniture, it was in a very old warehouse, but he paid all of his bills on time. And when he took over the business from my grandfather, they were in debt by $30,000. And he had to figure out, how do I get out of this debt? I've got these vendors calling. And I wasn't really paying attention, but I really was paying attention. Like, it matters. It matters how you do that. And I know colleagues that have been in situations where they haven't been able to give payroll to staff. And so I'm very conservative financially, and really try to make sure, poor Kelly, I'm like, did you call AT&T and see if they could not give us the raise this month? You know, we do a lot of that because all those little pieces matter. And so we are very financially stable. The school will be able to give some money towards the CASA project, and the CASA project's pretty close to being fully funded. So we're hopeful to start that project in this next year. So, and then this other thing is this, the new graduation pathways, and Hannah and Danielle are going to talk about that a little bit later. But that's been really powerful. That, you know, I don't know if you're aware, because not all of you have children in the teens program, but every year we'd have children, teens, in tears about taking the I-Step 10 test for the second year in a row, the third time, and second time in a year. And so we had one of the State Board of Education members come out to our school last year, and we were telling him all about our school, and all of a sudden they made new ways for kids to show that they were ready to graduate high school. A lot of them are the things that we're doing, which is really cool, because we were ready to go into action. And these poor women, I drove them crazy last March through August and said, we can do it, let's start it now. And we did have the option of starting now, so they'll fill you in a little bit later, but that's really, really cool. And so we've had a whole lot of teens that would have had to retake the I-Step 10 this year that don't have to, because we put some things in place for them. The math I-Step 10's passing rate in the state of Indiana is 32%. And so that means 70% of these kids usually don't ever pass. They just keep taking it time after time and practicing, and it's really demoralizing. Other updates, we're in year 3 of our 5-year charter renewal with Ball State. So, you know, I guess I can breathe easy for one more year, and then we have to get really busy again. And hopefully what they did the time before is similar to what they'll do this time. But they did give us a 5-year renewal, which is really cool, so it gives us some time. The lottery, which happens next Monday at 5 o'clock. And so we'll have about 80 in the lottery this coming week, and we'll hold about 100 on the wait list throughout the year. And so that's really powerful and really humbling and really hard when you have families that finally found their place. Glenn and I were here on Saturday at school, and I saw this person driving around, and lots of times families are meeting here to drop off and so forth. And so I looked over and hi, and I'm like, I don't really recognize. And they stop and get out, and they go, hi, do you know anything about the school? And I said, well, I'm the director. You are? Can we talk to you? We met one of your teens that was interning at my hairstylist, and they were telling us all about the school. And so I wanted to bring my child here, and we'll be here on Wednesday to observe. Anyway, it's just, those things happen pretty frequently, and it's very humbling. Get goosebumps all over yourself. And I said to this teen, wow, thanks for being the ambassador. She goes, how cool, they just showed up, you know, and they're going to be here for the tour tomorrow. So Hannah and I have been working on this project when Lily had some money to give away. It was Lily, right?
Yes.
And we didn't get it, but there was a lot of people that got it. But we came up with all these brainstorms of things if we could do anything. And some of it we thought, well, if we can't do everything, maybe we'll be able to do some of these things. And so, hello, Melissa, can you help us find some money to do this thing, since Lily didn't give us this? So we got a small grant, but it would be helpful from the Baptist Health Foundation. And so if you know where the nursery is up on the hill, one of the bays of the garage will become what we're coining the Courage Cabin. And so it will be a place where we will let some therapists out in the community just be in that space for free. And so that teens and just this end of the building for right now will be able to go up, do a session with a therapist that you guys work out, and then it's a really big need in our community to have support on campus. So we actually met with some of our families that are going to help us to try to make this into a cute, cozy courage cabin from a garage space. So that's really exciting. One of the things that one of our board members, Melissa Merida, who is the director, was the director at the Norway Flint County Library. We were talking to her about some things that she was doing, and Heather Brown actually went and met with her, and then their staff came in at our last in-service day on the 4th to help us to create a partnership with the library where we can use their, like we're sitting in the library here, and be able to get to all of their resources and books and so forth. So if you saw that go out to you a month ago, it shows you how, that this is happening. Your teen child now has a login, and so you can get to things for free at home and with your child. So we hope to keep sharing that information, but it's pretty powerful. We did so much on that in-service day. I feel like that got lost in the shuffle, but we will pull that back up again. And then focus on working smarter, after almost 20 years as a school, trying to think about what are the things that we are holding on to that aren't as important anymore, and what are the things that we could do better. And one of those examples was enrollment last year. Like, it's really cool to see everybody at enrollment, but it's really hard for some families to come in on a Saturday morning or a Friday afternoon. And so Prana and Kelly and Melissa worked really, really hard with our vendors to figure out a way that we could do that. You could do that from home, and then we can upload that information and keep it fresh, and so that everything gets really consistent in the enrollment process. And speaking of enrollment, turn it over to Prina.
So some of you know that last year was the first time we did online enrollment, and when we surveyed our families, a lot of them gave us positive feedback, and some of you also gave us some necessary feedback on how we could improve the process. So thank you for that. This year we're keeping the basic essence of enrollment the same. You have 2 dates to remember, one by which you must complete the forms, one by which you want to make sure you pay the material fees to make sure your spot is secured for your child. We've made a few updates to this. One of the most important ones is when you enter the data in the form, we will be using that and updating it in our database management system by the end of March. So for example, your address has changed and you'll give us the new address during enrollment forms. That will be reflected from 1st of April in our systems. So you don't have to worry about it. It's not going to wait until the summer to get entered into the system. It'll be reflected as soon as is possible. Second update that we've done is, and this is keeping in mind the changing dynamics of our families and there being multi-family households now, there is an option for you to now enter information for 4 adults in the household. So if you have grandparents or caregivers that are in charge of your kids on a day-to-day basis and you want to keep them informed about school closings, about studio notifications, about work from home things, make sure you give us that details during enrollment form. You'll have an option to do so, and they'll become a part of that list. They'll also be part of the email reminders. They'll be part of school-wide notifications, text messages. So be conscious of who you're adding, and especially if you and your child's father or your child's other parent are discussing together with each other on who's going to be on that list. If you feel that you don't want those adults to be part of the regular notification, but you still want them to be part of the emergency contacts, we've now increased the number of contacts that you can add to the system. Instead of limiting it to 3, now you can have 5 adults that can be part of your emergency contact list. These will be the people who we will call instead, if we can't reach out to you and we need your learner to be picked up, or if these are the people, especially for the early ed and elementary level, these will be the people that can pick up your kid and you don't have to necessarily, you're not going to go through the process of ID and all that stuff. The other thing that we need is please make sure, if you haven't already submitted a copy of birth certificate for your learner, and if you're new this year, please make sure you do so by 15th March. Hopefully we have copies for the rest of you who will be here for years together. Also, there are some required immunizations that the Indiana State Department of Health requires a child to do. So we will be sharing that information in the enrollment form. Please have a plan in place to have your child immunized if you cannot do so by 15th of March. And share those updated immunizations with us or with health services. Health plans. So we have been seeing a lot of health needs changing for the learners, and we want to assure you that all the staff gets the necessary training to deal with different health requirements of each child. If your child needs support at school for any health-related needs, please let us know, and we are more than happy to create a plan to support anything that they need at the school. We're seeing a lot of development of diabetes, allergies, and all that stuff. So if there's something that we should know, please share that with us so we can be as supportive as we possibly can be at the school. These are just the timelines. We'll be opening the enrollment forms the week of PPCs. They'll be made available to you. We will send you an email with more details on that the week of PPCs, so keep an eye out for those. You want to make sure you submit your forms by 15th of March to make sure your spot's confirmed. We will also be sending out the invoices for the material fees and early education deposits as soon as the deadline for the forms is completed. And then you have time to finish a payment for the material fees by 15th of April. All these details are included and elaborated in the enrollment email that will be sent out next week. If you have any questions or have concerns or need support just doing this, need like physical support sitting in and doing it in front of us, we'll have a couple of Chromebooks in the cupola to help you get settled on that. You're welcome to walk in during PPCs. We'll have Chromebooks available to get you started on that. However, if you can't meet us during those PPC days, just send us an email, shoot us an email, and we're more than happy to set up a time to support you on that.
You got the sneak peek information that people won't get till next week.
So we do really listen to families. We do a survey every year, and the staff goes through the studio level surveys, and the cupola staff goes through the general survey information and really think about what people are saying. We're really fortunate that we have families that know how to communicate well. When there's a concern, they don't wait till the end of the year to share it here. They share it directly to the people around them, which is what we want to have happen. But this also gives us good summative information too. Is the PPC still the most important information that you get from the school, or has that shifted? And so it helps us to keep on par with what we feel is important and how we're doing with that information. So this was the information from the Family's Voice in 17-18. So pretty powerful. Our retention rate, I think this past year was 96%. Really powerful. We feel very fortunate. And then when families and others, children and teens have constructive information, it's also really, really helpful. So it helps us to be our best at that. They are the hardest working staff on the planet, and so I like to share some of the things that they do. And so one of them, what people, I think it's hard to understand is that when you go to get training, for me it was at Xavier, and I remember when I went through training, we made all these albums of the Montessori scope and sequence. And I said, okay, so where's the cliff notes? Like, what do I do day one? What do I do with this level? What do I do? And they're like, no, you watch the children, and then you adjust what you're going to do. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I have 59 children showing up. Like, how do you do that? And that was even before we were a public school, right? So here I got all this information, and I had, how to make it work. They're like, you'll figure it out in 3 years. I'm like, I don't have 3 years. I need to do this right now. And so on top of that, so the Montessori philosophy has a dozen at the level that I was training in, albums that we created. The level that Danielle's training in right now, it's different, but it's still a whole lot. And trying to figure out how to integrate that with all the other things that we do, like the state standards, which have switched, 3 times over the past 7 or 8 years, and trying to understand, if I follow the child and I watch what they need, oh yeah, and they're supposed to have tally marks right now too. So I've got to figure out how do I put that in place. And so those are all the different things that we're trying to understand. We've grown so much in the knowledge base that we have about dual credits and college and career readiness, and these ladies will share more about that later. Individualized interventions, so finding what I did Brina, magic computer woman, created some spreadsheets today the last month that help the staff to predict where they think children are on school success things like iStep, NWA, iLearn. And so iLearn is the new name for iStep this year. It's a whole new program again. But really trying to see, okay, are those children that I know that probably aren't ready for this information yet? Are we all clear? Do the parents and I both understand this? And are we gonna be okay with that? Or is it because of something, a pattern maybe the child's in that we need to do differently? And so creating kind of those interventions for young people so that we can really think about. And so we do that a lot. Following the Montessori scope and sequence, although much is consistent with the Sanders, we don't drill and skill. Our process is not to be the best test takers in the community. So it's trying to do it enough. And when Glenn and I meet with new families every Wednesday, at least one person, and sometimes multiple, will say, that's why I'm here. I'm here because I don't want my child to be doing that anymore. They've lost their light in their eyes, and we're here to do something different. And so trying to find that balance. Working with Alan and Emily this summer on I think it was the 8th level math assessment, which it is just, to see these kids work so hard and be applying information. And then again, the pass rate, I think, for 8th grade math was very, very low. And it's really hard because families don't understand all those pieces. They go, why didn't you pass? We're like, don't say that. It's really, like if most of us, if we passed out the 8th grade math iStep right now, Emily and Alan might pass it, but I doubt the rest of us would. And so it's, it isn't really things that seem rudimentary. It's mostly what none of us use anymore. But it's trying to do enough of that to not make that child have a self-esteem component, and also trying to help them to build resiliency and help them to build some of those skills when they're ready. When they show that readiness that they can move on to algebra. There's several kids in the islands every year that go up and to take algebra. And there's kids that go up as sophomores or juniors at our school that go to dual credit classes for advanced math. So all of those things are available to them, but we don't try to make everyone in the same box. What was that last one there? Did I say it? Yeah, so I said it. Yeah, that was about it. Put a bow on it. So there's a new ADF accountability system, and so although his name was Tony Bennett, who was a state superintendent for years, that was not, I love you, Tony, state superintendent, and he did a lot of things that were powerful for charter schools in Indiana. He really helped us do several things. One of the things that he did that I wasn't fond of, which was this, the accountability system that we're grading schools. And so it adjusts and changes, and Priya and I get gray hairs trying to predict what all of this might mean on a given day, but really trying to understand those. So like one of the things that's part of the accountability system this year is attendance. And so, if a child doesn't have 96% attendance, which we think is about 7 days, if they have more than 7 days, they don't meet that criteria, so we lose points. Oftentimes when we get a grade from the state, which this year was a B, and we did not throw a party about it because, then what do we do when we get the D or the F? And so, it really feels like and we study and look at this and as groups and levels and try to understand. And like every charter school and every school that I know of, there's no real way to predict that information. So you could work really, really hard, and there could be one demographic that didn't score well, that you'd lose such and such points, and your score could go from a C to a D or a D to a B. And so it's a really challenging process. Only young people that have been here for 162 days are counted. There's not a modified assessment anymore, so everyone takes the same assessment if they're taking iStep 10 or iLearn. We often miss points because of class side. One of our board members, Sridhar Ramachandran, who's a informatics professor at IUS, went with me to a Ball State Summit a couple of years ago. And someone from the DOE was there talking about, I don't even think it was this accountability system, I think it was the one before. And he said, you realize small schools are, their scores are detrimented to the process because their N size is smaller. And they're like, well, we think we've taken them. And he's like, no. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. But it was really cool because, people don't realize how that changes when you have an N size of 1,200 versus 27 or 35, And so it does make a difference. So that was our score this year, which was helpful because we do have that facility grant from the state that gives us a little bit of money right now. It's $500 per child if we are an A, B, or C school. So one of the things actually my colleagues and I are working on with the legislators is to create a new facility bill for charter schools that would allow all charter schools, regardless of their grade, just like New Floyd County, when they do a referendum, they can get a referendum whether they're an F school or a C school. And so for us to get facility funding for children, and we're looking at that amount to be $1,500 to $3,000 per child that goes onward. So it's something that, right now, and Kelly will talk about a little bit more, but we owe a little bit more than $5 million on the building. And no other school in the history of Indiana pays for their buildings, they just don't. They have capital projects funds and they could do a referendum. We don't have either one. And so these are some of the school success improvements, talking about and analyzing the assessment. So, oh, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
So the facilities money goes to the grant you said from the state?
So right now it comes to us, the $500 does, if we are an A, B, or C school. So we received that for the past 3 years.
And it spends on?
So it's meant to be for facilities, but it's pretty broad. Like we'll use it some for the CASA and some for the mortgage to pay down the loan. Yeah. So we analyze, what kiddos do, and when I get into the assessment information here in a minute, you'll see that a child can score really well in NWA reading, and when they do the I-STEP reading test, they don't, and so it flip-flops a lot. So we try to look at it from multiple points of view and see what we learn from what children learn. Adjustments based on those current assessments. So again, we utilize some things like Google Computer Science Training, Mastery Connect, Newsela are a few of the programs very few that we use to help with that. Individualized interventions that I talked about. And so then the staff created kind of so the differentiated salary structure of the staff has to do with, you don't just get this much more money a year, you could get up to this much money, and it depends on if you did these 7 things. And so we've created a mess for ourselves, and we always do. We can't do things simply because we want it to be diverse and to think about things lots of different ways. It's a big job, but it's really powerful because it's not just about you've been here for so many years, and it's not just about if your classroom is an A, like we don't do any of that. We actually don't take any of the money from the state that has to do with highly qualified teachers because we don't think it's fair. For Hannigan to get this amount of money, but Danielle doesn't because Hannigan doesn't teach a core course. And or Hannigan's scores for her kids weren't highly qualified, so now she can't get that extra $350. So it throws off all of my charter school colleagues. They're like, you don't take the money? Like, we don't take the money. We talked about it as a staff. We're like, if we all can't split it, we're not taking it. It's not worth $300 to break our community apart. Any questions about any of that? Just a little bit of information, tiny, little. All right. So iRead 3 is a test that all third levels take. It was put in place a few years ago. It was supposed to be, and it started out to be this way, the test that would decide if a child could graduate from grade 3 or be retained. And so, of course, our school was horrified by this law, and we found a way to not do it. That's just what we do. And so, we looked at what the process was, and it says you had to retain them, but it doesn't mean they didn't have to stay in the same classroom. So unless we decided as a community, family, staff, myself sometimes, that this child really had their best interest socially and academically and emotionally to stay in that studio for another year as a third level, then regardless of what happened to the test, we would move them up into the 9 to 12 program. They would be known as a third level to the state, but here they would be a fourth level, and then we could move them to a fifth level the next year. So that's the way we kind of went around that. They've made lots of adjustments now, so all schools do that, but we thought that was really important. I mean, our scores are pretty strong at the third level. What you see there in the colors, so the light blue is the number of kids this past year that passed iRead 3, and the darker blue is the number that were here from early ed, and so then it kind of goes down from there. So, you got to remember our N size, our class size for this is like 33, to 38, and so it would all depend. Sometimes that's just only 2 children in some of those statistics. And so people are like, wow, you went down from 97 to 87. I think that was 1 child for that particular year. So it really just depends on the total number. So this is the overall I-STEP. I did not break it down by grade level, but you see 4 years ago our math score was 59. That was the old I-STEP test. The 30s are the new I-STEP test. The 40 is the new I-STEP test too. And then we'll have the I-Learn test. So it'll be interesting to see where that part falls there. And so this will be an I-Learn assessment. So we'll remove I-STEP 10 next year from I-Learn. And so then you see the language assessment. So right now I-Learn is just math and language, and then science and social studies for certain age levels. So for our conversation tonight, I'm just sharing those, the math and language. And then NWA has broken down in reading and language, and so there's 2 components of our NWA. So it's a proficiency, meaning that did our children at a 4th level in the spring score above or the same as everyone else in Indiana, and then they would be considered proficient. And so a pretty strong number. And then percentage of growth. And there's the language numbers. We switched proficient and growth on this slide. That's interesting. I wonder if those numbers are still the same. Looks like it. And then the math numbers. And so you notice on each of those that, for example, math, which is one of those areas that, in our renewal we talk about that. It's harder at that 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and even sometimes 7th and 8th level. And then our kiddos, when they get to the 9th, 10th level, it all comes together, right? When that 6th to 9th level, it starts to come together, starts to become more consistent with abstraction instead of concrete. And so what we do in this slide is say, okay, did Hannigan pass I-STEP, or did she beat or meet the proficiency of NWA in language, for instance, or did she meet the growth for NWA language? So if she did one of those things, we count that as a success for her, right? And so what I think is really interesting about that is, so when you do it that way and you try to look at all 3 of those options for a young person, this year our math was at 76%, our reading was at 90%, our language was at 84%. So that math number means either they passed the math I-STEP test, or they met or beat the proficiency number for math and NWA, or they meet or beat the growth area for NWA. Does that make sense? I just think it's an interesting way to look at it. Ball State's not fond of this slide. They don't like us to mix and match, but I think it tells a whole story. And so that's what we use as a staff to show our success, is that they've done one of those 3. And even if they haven't done one of those 3, if they're a child with an IEP and they can show in some other way, and so then we have our teachers of record, Nikki and Jacob, that teachers have a way to show, but look at all of this growth they did. And so there's even a way for a few of those children to get a waiver for that process as well.
So that percentage is the number of students that improved in some measure, is that what that 76 means?
Or, met the measure, right? So for I-STEP, they passed. Passed or passed plus. So what does it all mean? We'll continue to fight for the balance of that. And again, Hannigan and Danielle are going to talk a little bit about graduation pathways, but we hope what's happening at this end of the building with the state and the State Board of Education happens down there too, that we start to look at success beyond just one test that happens once a year. The I-Learn test will be computerized completely. This will be interesting. This will be the first year children will all have to type, starting in grade 3, their answers. And so we've been preparing for that. Sometimes it feels like inauthentic, because we want to give them enough chance to know how to write the words in this way, since they won't be able to use a pen or pencil for it. So all of that's still the same. So with that, I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Oh, thank
Hannigan.
you. Put that in the middle of us.
Mm-hmm.
So Valerie, who's the one who is out with her baby right now. I know,
Right, and the baby. I'll pass
yeah. And Hannigan and I all work as support staff in our teens program specifically. And we have such a mixed bag of things that we do. We do support teens in some of the courses they're doing, but we also support the advisors in helping to plan with the teams so that there's some level of cohesiveness across the studios. And we kind of narrow what we do down to 3 bullet points, so these get to be very large. So we're trying to prepare them for skills that they're going to need, prepare them for classes they're going to take, prepare them for whatever their path might be when they exit our doors here. The other thing is empower them, making sure that they understand that they are strong individuals who can, in fact, make their own decisions, and advocate for themselves when they need to, not just in class, but when they're in internships and whatnot. And then lastly, all of this comes together for gaining skills for adulthood. So one of our goals, and Hannigan's going to talk about it a little bit more in a couple of slides, is that they have skills not just in how to take a class, but how to take a class at a college, how to take a class for a specific certification, how to go out into the workplace with a resume built and have an internship that could potentially turn into a job and whatnot. So it's something where they get a lot of experience and get to experiment with being an adult before they actually graduate from here, which is, training to be an adult is something I wish I
That would have been handy
would have
30 years ago.
That's pretty exciting. And this picture is last year's graduating class. I like to mention that each year they plan the colors for the graduation and what they're going to do at graduation, and it is a treat to be with them when they're in this planning process because it's really important to them and it is not a simple process. Choosing those gown colors took months.
And they look great.
They're beautiful.
They get to choose. They start from scratch, don't they?
Every year. So our first graduating cohort was in 2011, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now. That year, we had 14 graduates, and our largest graduating class was actually in 2017 at 44. Last year we had 31 graduates, and this year we'll have 40. So we always kind of vacillate between this number of the low 30s and up towards 40. It kind of depends on the year.
Because we don't take kids after that 10th
We don't
level.
take kids after 10th level, and we do have a couple kids who will choose to or are ready to graduate early, just developmentally, and have plans that are really solid in that 4th year instead of staying for all 4 years. Hold on. Last year, just some interesting percentages as I was looking at this. We've had more kids last year graduate with an honors diploma than what we have in previous years. I think part of that is us solidifying what happens in their 9th and 10th level years, so 1st and 2nd year in the WITS program. And then also 81% heading off to college, and that includes not just 4-year colleges, but also 2-year colleges and advanced training programs. And then also we've had kind of a rise in percentage recently of our dual credit coursework, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. So the class of 2018, another picture of them, our graduates from last year, were accepted to private and public institutions really
All over the
across
place.
the country. Yeah.
We read those too.
They got acceptances to Worcester, Hanover, Kent State, Goshen, IU, IUS, AMDA, Point Park, Pace, Maymount, Manhattan, University of Arts. I'm not going to go through and list all of them, but all over the place. We had, I think, teams stretching a little farther than what they have before, and that was pretty exciting to work with. And last year, they were offered over $1 million in scholarships, both in scholarships from their institutions and also community scholarships. That's something that we try to work with them with year-round. So this year, the class of 2019, we have 40 teens graduating. This is a picture of them at their senior retreat this year as they were attempting to name everyone in their class. That was exciting to see. 32 of them have actually completed 1 or more dual credits. This is something we work really hard to help them do by the time they graduate. Our dual credits, they can come through a variety of institutions. Right now we have an agreement with Ivy Tech And so the vast majority of our teams are taking courses through ID Tech. And some of those courses are things like English composition and introduction to biology. And some of them are introduction to refrigeration and welding and introduction HVAC courses. So they are kind of all over the place and give our teens a variety of experiences. Actually, by the end of this year, they will have completed 97 dual credit courses and accumulated over 291 college credit hours. So some of our teens are really actually going to be done with their first year of college before they exit here. And at a lower cost. At a lower cost than what it would have been otherwise. We have acceptance letters coming in to colleges, universities, technical schools, and so on already. And they're always very excited when they get accepted. And so we're getting into that moment of where they have to decide. That's what we're doing.
Okay. What's new? Oh my gosh, everything is new.
It's all new.
We just started over
Oh
new.
gosh.
It really has been astounding to see what, I consider a seismic shift in the DOE focus. So it's been a joy. I don't think I've ever, in 18 years of working with teams, said, wow, I love these new ideas the DOE is asking us to. I've never gotten to say that before. Yes, the Department of Ed. Typically you wait with horror for whatever new memo is going to impose your choices in how you plan things. So this is terribly exciting. So what's new? These things are, we could really get into the weeds with this and end up here for hours. So to prevent me from doing that, I want to remind everyone that there was a workshop at the beginning of the year. So whether you got to see that or were part of that, or whether you just want to refresh your memory, that is on the Inform Montessori blog, correct? The video is there, right?
Yay.
That gets into the weeds with all of these things. But the big picture, seismic shift, is this renewed focus on career and or college preparation, which that seems like that should be obvious, but with the DOE sort of getting behind that finally, it's allowed a lot more freedom and opportunity for the learners to really think about what they might want to do next and what can you do now in high school to get ready for that, so that when you walk out these doors you are as confident and prepared and equipped as humanly possible to do whatever these next steps might be. And so the graduation pathways, to try to boil that down simply, what that means is before you had to fulfill all of your requirements and you had to pass these couple of tests in English and in math, and then you were deemed worthy of being an adult. And so while that may have all been great and true and worked well for some folks, the reality is standardized testing does not encompass all of the amazing things that our children and teens can do. And so what the graduation pathways have done is acknowledge that at long last, and it's terribly exciting. They're now going, so this person can actually demonstrate that they are ready for the adult world in a wide variety of ways. They can complete dual credit courses, they can pursue the academic honors diploma and knock out all of those requirements. They could still pass those tests, those are fine. But they can also pursue career and technical education focused courses. And so where it says career and technical, couple of bullets down, the CTE courses, these have been a huge focus over the last year or so, and we've been waiting around in them for a couple of years trying to sort them out, along with everyone else in the state, because it's this huge, confusing Pandora's box of opportunity. But long story short, Danielle and I have both gotten CTE licensure in different areas, so that between the two of us, we cover a huge variety of courses. My license is in the family and consumer sciences world, which means I can do everything from human and social services to education careers to culinary arts, which is hysterical if you want to know anything about my actual cooking abilities. But what that means is that
I help out.
I can support the learners with making the connections they need to learn the thing. So I'm not teaching them to cook, I assure you. Emily and Danielle can support with that.
Too.
I get them connected to the people that can. And then your licensure's
I'm licensed
in
in business and computer programming and computer science. And so I that opened up the whole world of marketing and accounting and entrepreneurship, as well as computer programming, informatics, networking, and systems. I have some knowledge in business and some knowledge in computer programming, but not lots of deep knowledge. But what I have is a big connection in the community to computer scientists, to computer programmers, and data analysts to help make sure that the kids' work is actually what they're supposed to be doing. And so it's one of those things, as I have a team who's progressing through the computer science courses, I start reaching out to those community members and saying, okay, so the team is suggesting this, you're suggesting this, can we meet up and get you guys together? And so that's been kind of exciting to have more community connections with that.
Right.
So the licensure is like you understand what makes a good learning experience of this thing, whether it's
Right.
you like
Yes.
you can
Yes.
personalize it.
Yes. And so, and the things that we don't have licensure for, we can get them connected through IB Tech. So it doesn't mean these other opportunities aren't available. They can still be available, whether it's through IB Tech or through another institute of higher learning, online or U of L or IUS, et cetera. But basically, all of these pieces that used to feel like disparate pieces that were all sort of operating in isolation, you did your dual credit, you did your internship, you did your coursework, these were all sort of separate circles. Now, all of that is really blending together to be this really personalized journey where your internship, of course, it's going to be in line with your career goals, and so is your coursework, and so are your portfolio projects, and all of these things work together for a really cohesive experience. So it's awfully exciting
I was going to mention
to be
part
at the
of-
beginning of that.
Yeah, part of what we've done is make sure those first 2 years of high school experience are pretty cohesive for that group. They really get a cohort group where they're in a humanities course together, they're taking math together, they're taking their first sciences together. And then as they exit those 9th and 10th level years and head into those 11th, 12th level years, their world opens up exponentially. They have a lot more freedom to choose what they're doing. They can choose career concentrators and courses that they're truly interested in, and get to have more of that like on-campus, off-campus experience.
And just some of the success stories we've already seen that have been so exciting. One, Barbara mentioned that the iStep 10 test that in the past has been this demoralizing process of, let's say it doesn't work out for you and you're a 10th level, you were then taking it every semester for the rest of high school. So by the time you were at 12th level, and this is maybe your 6th time encountering it, there's no way we could even make that feel okay anymore. You know, the first couple times you're like, it's gonna be, you know, and by then it's like, let's all just get through this and survive. And now that is no longer the case. And so after all of these years, this is my 9th year here, of watching learners struggle with this on their back, this year was the first time we got to take a couple of learners maybe that were in that boat, that in the past they would have been heading down that path of now you're going to take it forever for the next few years. Instead, we got to take that previously negative experience and say, hey, guess what? This 1 hour of your life on this one day, this test didn't work out for you, but guess what? You have all of these talents and opportunities in these other directions. Let's choose which one of those you want to do. So you have this learner that a year ago would have come out feeling like this. They're now bouncing out the door going, I'm going to follow a career concentrator to do this thing. And they feel excited, and it turns this thing that would have been demoralizing into an empowerment opportunity. And that it's huge, the shift that is for them. And then today, I teach preparing for college and careers, and this is my first time getting to teach it since this shift has happened. And so I set 85 9th and 10th levels loose on the Department of Ed website today, which if you ever want some light bedtime reading, go check that out. But I took them to the page that just had the Pandora's box of career concentrators and all the different paths you could go down, and they were off and running. And so the advisors they're all going to have a lot to hear about when these kids come in next week saying, well, I'm going to do this concentrator, I'm going to do these classes, and they're excited and they feel in charge of their world. And that's ultimately what we want for all of them. Yeah. So that's a lot. So questions or thoughts?
Well, you must have nailed it.
Wow, that
Yep.
was.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Gymnastics practice is over and we have to go there.
Oh.
So
Oh.
I would like to stay, but usually we try to just sneak out, but since we
It's
might
kinda
be
hard
going
in
to
this
school, thank you for all the information.
Thank you.
They don't think you're boring, Kelly Katie. They just,
All right. All right, so we are at max capacity for our enrollment, and we currently have a wait list. So our ADM is currently at 542 learners. So our state basic grant, our funding that we get from the state is based on our ADM count. So you want to switch? And then when our auditors were here back in August, they said we are a very strong financial school at the end of our audit. As you can see, we have our revenues over expenses. We did go up from 17 to 18. We went up quite a bit there. There are a few drops from 2012 to 2013. The state paid off our growth loan, and we carried a larger balance than what they paid off, so there was a drop there.
we're just holding that on our books.
Yeah.
We're hoping they're gonna pay us someday for it. Say, okay, we'll give you that extra 300,000 that you say we owe you.
So, and then in 16 to 17, there was a drop there too. We did increase salaries, and some of our operating expenses did increase there. All right, so this is our budget for 2018 and 19. You can see that most of our funding is coming from the charter grant, or the state basic grant, our charter funding at 84% there. And then 15% of that comes from program material fees and early ed tuition. All right, our expenses, as you can see, we put most of it towards our staff because we greatly appreciate them. 74% goes to salaries and benefits. And then the next largest expense is our loan payments at 11%. All right, so
This is a fun slide.
So these are our performance indicators for Ball State. As you can see, we are way above where they would like for us to be. At our working capital ratio and quick ratio, we're almost 4 times what they want us to be at.
Wow, it's huge.
And on our unrestricted cash, they would like us to be able to function and operate for 60 days without any new income coming in. We can do it for almost a year at 335 days. So, and then our assets, we're 51% is financed. They recommend that it be under 90. So we're at a good percentage on that. Our current outstanding on the loan is $5.6 million. Refinancing, that's really helped bring those payments down, and we can put that towards salaries for the staff. And the staff does receive a CSP. It's a small percentage of revenue over expenses that we get. We had our audit ended this past June. We had a nice audit with that. And we are held accountable to our board of directors, families, and all of our financial partners. So, any questions?
Nailed it, didn't she? Now what are we gonna do with that money, Melissa?
I get to spend it. No, I'm just kidding.
She wants more.
No, it's not fun. Yes, go ahead and skip. So I wanted to start out with a thank you. This is our second year participating, or no, what, third year I think, participating in Give for Good Louisville and Giving Tuesday, which are both single day giving efforts that try to rally the community around supporting nonprofits and kind of raise awareness about the needs in the community, and they're fun things to be involved with. And our families especially seem to have really embraced Give for Good Louisville, which is a regional giving day. And this year we even had a couple families offer some matches of their own for that, so we'd like to keep growing that. We raised about $11,000 on our own in one day, and then with matching dollars we got to almost $15,000 in one day. So that's really fabulous, and we want to continue that. And then we're kind of using Giving Tuesday around Thanksgiving as another opportunity. That's kind of a build off of Black Friday and all that consumerism, and then reminding that you should also hopefully designate part of your income for giving as well. So those were both really exciting efforts that we want to continue, and I hope everyone keeps embracing those. We also are doing this interesting marketing project, which is also going to do a little fundraising for the school. And again, you're getting a sneak peek because we'll send out some emails about this, and there'll be information during PPCs. I do have a handout today if you're interested. But if you have a checking account at German American Bank, which is pretty much the only local bank left in our community besides First Harrison Bank, and they also have been a great partner for our school. They hold our loans for the school and do our banking, so we just have been able to team up with them. They've given us the largest single donation to the CASA. So they've been a good partner, and if you have a checking account with them, you can get a debit card. So this is not a credit card, so you're not incurring any fees or anything. It's just your regular spending account. If you swipe that card, the CM card, then we get 2 cents from that swipe every time you do it. So it's not based on what you spend or anything like that. So it's just a way they're trying to encourage people to get engaged with the community. They've got cards like this for other organizations as well. So like Floyd Central in New Albany, for example, they have a Bulldog card and a Highlander card. And so we're like, well, we got to get on this. We're going to do the CM card. So you'll hear more about that. That's an option for you. I think you'll be hearing more about this as the CASA project kind of gets launched, and that's not really the primary need for our fundraising. We're just trying to really make people aware of all of the project-based learning that's happening in the school. So when most schools get that state basic grant, 70%, whatever, oh, you're over there. 70% of the funding, they're doing more standardized learning and buying standardized stuff like books, textbooks. They're paying their staff too. Most of school's expenses, of course, are staff. But we try to do these other really exciting things, like our islands are doing occupations where 1 day a week they're practicing doing real work in some career path that they might do, and they're cooking meals and they're building things and they're doing all this kind of stuff. And 9 to 12 are doing seminars, applied seminars and things that they're interested in. And we've got all these great theater things that are happening, but it's not a theater performance for the sake of performance. It's a learning experience about expressing yourself and developing the project and all the things that happen backstage and technical aspects that go into that. And so it's about these whole learning experiences. Well, those things, cost way more than like 20 math textbooks, right? So we want to give people opportunities to support things that they're specifically interested in, potentially at their level, or just things they want to support at the school that are unique. So we'll be talking more about those. And you can right now, we certainly don't limit people if there's things that they're interested in supporting. We want to try and make you aware of what's happening that fits your interests, and we'd love for you to support those things. Of course, though, I do have to talk about our project that we've been working on for about 2 years, the Casa de Curiosity, and this is also our 20th year of community Montessori. So we do have $1.4 million committed to this project. Primarily, that is additional money that came from the state of Indiana as part of that facility funding that Barbara referred to, the $500 per student. So that is the bulk. That's $810,000. So we want to be clear that that's where most of that came from. But we did raise quite a bit of money over the past 2 years to support that, and it would be amazing. And I think this is something that eventually I'll be talking more about, proposing having kind of an annual goal for our school of giving that's supporting our school annually, that people commit to on looking at a whole year, but potentially just giving that a month at a time. And really, it's not a whole lot. So, $20, 20 years, we had this opportunity, like, what does $20 look like? And if every family committed just $20 a month, then that's $240 a year, and that's $83,760 a year. In every family, that's not every learner And that's not per learner, that's every family that's in our school, just committed $20 a month. We could raise about $83,000 in a year, and I think that would be a great goal for us to work towards with our families. And you'll see an ask related to that with enrollment this year. Another advantage of our online enrollment is that it lets us give you a lot of information just as you're going through those steps. And so there'll be a page there that asks you to think about that and consider making a monthly commitment to the school, or pay it in one lump sum if that's what you'd like to do. We'd love to have it.
If they use their debit card, they're really giving $20.02. Let me pass the debit card around.
Yeah, we've got a couple in the room so you can check them out and see what they look like. We did just want to remind you what that hopeful design is going to look like. It won't look exactly like this. This is conceptual design, but it will be back in that teen parking lot area, attached to the MAC, but probably not like exactly up against the MAC. There'll probably be almost a separate building there, and hopefully have its own separate entrance so that when we have these after-school kind of activities, we can kind of be out of the school and be in this space just for getting together. So that'll be that. I just always like to do a reminder how to reach me. I had a great conversation with a parent today who reached out by email and then talked to them on the phone, so I'd love to talk to you if you have ideas. And we do have, I always remind people about our Informed Montessori blog. Our staff is putting a lot of effort into putting things that they feel like are valuable information on that resource for you, and it's all categorized. We're trying to categorize it by age level and like wellness and things that are about Montessori philosophy and things that are about parenting, and so you can like click on topics and be like, I'm wondering what the staff says about this thing. And as we go for a few years, I mean, we've only done this since basically a year and a half, so last year plus half of this year. And the wealth of knowledge that's on there is really pretty amazing. And we're also trying to link with other places in the community too, to give you resources like these ladies do for the teens. We're trying to do that for everyone in school. So check that out. And back to Barb.
Questions, thoughts, comments? Unless I know you have some. Just anybody?
So we're asking for people to kind of think of it as like a ballroom space, right? So it's not going to be set up like a theater. It's going to be a large open space with appropriate acoustics and lighting for theater. But
and other exhibitions and presentations?
Yeah, so really anything, but it's really more of a large group space. It's not a small group space. So when you're thinking music, I don't know if you're saying like potentially one-on-one lesson type of scenario, or if it's a performance, certainly. And we already do like our cabaret happens, and that has a lot of musical elements. Yeah, or bringing in people.
I was going to say 6 to 9 and 9 to 12 do a lot of fairs and exhibitions of their work. And right now those are happening in their studios.
Yeah.
And so this would actually allow them to be able to do that in this space potentially, and have more outside parents come in, and it wouldn't be quite as cramped as what's happening in their studios.
We
So
did have
all
a
kinds
good
of
example.
presentations.
Sorry, we're all talking about two was like 3 to 6, I think last year, used actually a PIP grant and brought in some drummers. And so yeah, like in the MAC, that sound was bouncing everywhere, right? Like it was still great, we loved it. But having a space like this that was really made for something like that, yes, that fits, I think. Good.
Thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. Thank you.